Hello, ladies. I want to go back to the original exercise I called the big test, or I may have called it something else when you received it. And it talked about the cameras. And we had to calculate the taxes, totals, the profit. We had to use the absolute cell reference when creating a formula, which is what we use when we created tax dollar amounts. Some people, when they did this, they accidentally put percentages. And then when they went back and fixed it, all the dollars actually showed up as a percentage. I want to remind you that all numbers are controlled by you um, in Excel by going to the numbers group. So if you go to the numbers group, you will see that there's a drop down. And on this drop down, you'll have a menu where you could actually tell the computer, you can tell Excel how you want those numbers to be displayed on the screen. So if it accidentally shows you as a percentage, you can go to the drop down and change that to currency, accounting, or number, which doesn't have a dollar sign, or even general, where there's no specific format. But for this example, I would choose either currency or accounting. That would probably work out better. Um, we talked about hour price versus sale price. This talked about the idea of a wholesale price and the sale price of you purchase an item when you're selling it and you don't pay the tax because you are basically charging the customer the tax, collecting that money for the state, and they do that based on the higher price. So when you're calculating the taxes, you can't calculate the taxes based on our price. Rather, you would calculate the taxes as the sale price. There's no quantities here, so there's no total amount. So we're only doing this based on one unit item. So it would be the sale price, that's the higher price, multiplied by the 6.5%. And as you learned in class, the multiply symbol is the asterisk. So if I'm making this formula to calculate taxes, I would say that the taxes for the Olympus camera is equal to the sale price of the item, that's the customer price or retail price, and we're going to multiply that by 6.5%. And now the idea is to make a formula that we can basically copy down to the other cells. So we have to ask ourselves, is this formula good enough to copy down? And the way to do that is to basically check if you want Excel to adjust the formula to its new location or new position. So for example, when we're calculating taxes here, we're using the price of the Olympus camera. But when I copy this formula down, I want the formula to not use the price of the Olympus camera. Rather, I would prefer that it uses it has to be the price of the Kodak camera. So that happens to be in D4. So in order for this formula to work for the Kodak camera, Excel would have to take the D3 and basically change it to a D4, and then for the Sony it will become a D5, for the Fuji D6, so on and so forth. So that looks okay. I wanted to do that. That's what they call a relative cell reference. When you copy a formula that changes, that is a relative cell reference. Now, when we're looking at D11, that represents the tax percentage, which is located here at 6.5. So I have to ask myself, when I copy this formula down, do I want the formula to say D4, which is a sale price of the Kodak camera, multiplied by D12? Well, not really, because D12 is empty. And if I keep copying this formula down, it'll become D13, D14, and you're basically multiplying by 0. And anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So you're going to have an error. Well, not really an error, it's just going to say 0 for you. And if you're using the accounting format, it'll show you no numbers at all. It'll just be blank with a dollar sign. So in this case, we don't want Excel to change this from a D11 to a D12. And that's where we create the absolute cell reference, which, as we learned in class, is you put a dollar sign in front of the column letter and a dollar sign in front of the row number. So that way, if you copy from top to bottom, The number 11 will not change. And if you, for some reason, were copying a formula from left to right, then the D would not change. It wouldn't become E, F, or G. So that is an absolute cell reference. So the difference between an absolute cell reference and a relative cell reference is, as we just explained, relative cell references will change when you copy a formula down. Absolute cell references will not. So we're going to use the keyboard shortcut to turn D11 into an absolute cell reference, and that keyboard shortcut is F4. So you can see by pressing the F4, the dollar signs appear on the screen, and now we've just told Excel, do not change this particular address when we're copying it down. So I'm going to test it out. I'm going to press Enter, although really it'd be better to press Control Enter so that it doesn't go down. You'll see that it's still in E3. At this point, I'm going to put my cursor over the fill handle, and you know you're in the right spot because you're going to get the black cross. You'll see that black cross there. And so I'm ready to copy this formula down, and I'm hoping that when I copy it down, Excel will change one side of the formula, but not the other. That's why we use an absolute cell reference. I'm going to let go of the mouse, and there you go. I'm going to examine this formula. You can do that by clicking on it and reviewing it in the formula bar. Some people also double click to see it at the window in the cell. So you can see it there. So if you double click, you will actually see the formula. If you don't want to double click, you can still see the formula over here, but instead Excel will just show you the result in the cell. So if I press Escape right now, I will see the results of my formula, but the actual formula is visible in the formula bar. I noticed that the D3 from the original formula was changed to D4, and the next one it says D5, D6. That was what we wanted. But when I look at D11, you'll notice that all of them are being multiplied by D11, which is exactly what we wanted. One way to visually see that is to go to the Formulas tab, click on the cell that has a formula, and use this feature called Trace Precedence. If I click on that, you will kind of see that the dots will show up on the cells that are being used in that formula. I'll just adjust it a little so it's closer. There you go. When I click on this, the next one, you're going to notice when I click on the Trace Precedence, this goes down, so this is correct, and this is also pointing to the 6.5. I'll do that one more time. You can't do them all at the same time, but there you go. You can see that this formula is working correctly, and it's safe to say that this was okay. Some of you probably noticed that when you copied it down, it actually damaged all of the formatting. So when you do that next time, and we won't cover it today, but when you do this next time, once you've copied it down, what you want to do is there's going to be a little smart tag, and it'll tell you or the options that you have, and one of the options will say fill without formatting, and then it'll keep the original format that exists in all of the cells as opposed to overwriting it, and now we've basically damaged or altered the original format. So when you're doing it, you'll fill handle it, and you'll see that smart tag, but we'll save that for another video.